So, David, we both trained as physicians.
Yes.
And we're both not practicing medicine. Uh,
To some degree.
Yeah, I know. People ask me a lot why I stopped, and then how my parents took it, and I wanted to hear because I think it's relevant to why the work that you're doing now is important. How did you come to the decision to not practice medicine or to practice medicine in the way that you are right now?
Yeah, and it's really something that I had not anticipated. When I finished my medical school, in large part, I had wanted to find ways to apply technology to improve health outcomes, but I didn't really know where that would take me. Prior to med school, I was a computer science major. I actually did a lot of programming and used to write video games and things like that. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to see if I could really deliver the best care possible. And one of my mentors, I trained at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, he introduced me to this concept of sort of outcomes medicine, where you're specifically looking at how you can apply the right information at the right time to improve health outcomes. But the most efficient way to deliver that is through technology. And so in working with him, he and I were co-principals of a company that was owned by Cedars-Sinai, and we built a product, and that product ultimately ended up taking us to the space of healthcare technology. And I think that's been a really exciting journey for me, because I think I've learned a lot about how technology is a great vehicle, but at the end of the day, it's about connecting individuals, connecting patients to their providers, and finding ways that the technology can be used to improve those outcomes.
Right. So we were talking before about aging in the right place, and technology obviously has a huge role in enabling that, in creating, like you said, connecting people and also offering this independence that people are looking for in older age. So what are exciting things that Samsung has found are working, are being adopted, are offering people new options that they might not have had until recently?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have realized, and again, if you focus on how do you improve outcomes, like quality of care, access to care, improving the efficiency of care, reducing costs and patient experience, the one missing ingredient in a lot of solutions is the fact that we're not getting consumers and patients better engaged. And if we think about that, there has been this perception that if you apply technology to a senior aging population, that they just can't use it. Just because we've given them the tech and it's too complicated, low adoption rates. What we're seeing, though, is that in many cases, if we better understand the user experience and we configure the technology to better meet their needs, a lot of times it's more seamless, it's behind the scenes, you can actually have high levels of adoption and you can have better outcomes. So I'll give you an example. We worked with a company, they did a lot of research in terms of how do you provide a technology device to a senior, and we're talking about folks that are typically over the age of 85. What they did is they found that in general, if you were to give, let's say, a phone or a tablet to an individual who's older, who may not have been exposed to this, you get about a 20% adoption rate. So that means you can give these and people will readily figure it out. But that means about 80% of folks, there is a barrier. And the barrier isn't as large as most people think. It's sometimes the screen went dim and I can't figure out how to do it, or I moved the icon off to the side, or something that physicians talk all the time about, video conferencing. So I'm going to send you home with a tablet and I'm going to do a video conference. So it's real simple. You go into the portal, you type in your username, password, and then as part of that process, you will be, I guess, tunneled in so that we can video conference. And now you've got this tablet and your grandchild comes up to you and says, well, we can now Skype. And so just click on this other icon and you just different username, password, and then you can go in here. And then grandchild 2 says we're on Google Hangouts. 3 different apps, 3 different usernames. Really, the user experience would say, I want to go to the contacts, see the face, hit the video button. And on the back end, it integrates into all this. And so you take the complexity and technology makes it easier. And it's not just about bigger icons, but it's really about knowing which things to lock down, which things to be able to provide support on, and then changing that user experience. And so there's 43 of these configurations that need to occur in order for us to make these technologies easier from a mobile device standpoint. And so what they did is they rolled this out as part of a study, which they did with the National Coalition on Aging, and they specifically looked to see in a group of 225 seniors who had zero to very little technology experience, to see whether or not this technology could be first adopted, and two, whether it could actually improve outcomes. So over a 3-month period, they found that the technology went from 0% adoption to well over 80, 90%. And that's an amazing statistic when you think about the fact that these are folks who'd never really used it before. But the second thing was we also saw better outcomes. We saw improved socialization, improved physical activity. So how could that be? Well, what happened was the NCOA had put in these kind of like weekly challenges. This week, walk a block or walk 2 blocks. Now talk to somebody you don't know. And as part of that program, they were able to get high levels of engagement, and ultimately it improved outcomes. So really kind of what I'm interested in, what Samsung's interested in, is to seeing if technology can be applied in a way that would allow us to be able to tap into some of these needs and ultimately allow us to be able to create opportunities for better improved outcomes.
So it's not necessarily about creating elaborate new devices, but finding new ways to reconfigure platforms and devices, tablets, the exact same tablet that might be otherwise unusable, and make it more logical for someone who's at has a different relationship to technology.
Yeah, a lot of times the technology is there. We just haven't figured out how to adapt it to the individual. So typically we say, you need to adapt to the technology. What we're looking at it is, well, why can't the technology adapt to you? So if, let's say we were to set up a smart home and we were to say, well, it's really easy, you set this all up yourself, and then what it's going to do is going to help you turn on and off the lights. Well, that's nice, but what if I could tell you that we can set up a technology where it allows you to be able to live safely and independently at home? Well, now the value proposition is quite different, and then how do we do that, and how do we make it easier for you? Well, perhaps what we need to do is we need to figure out, perhaps there's just more sensors in the area as opposed to you having to do everything through a remote control or some other mechanism. So, it's about the user experience. It's about creating an infrastructure that's more seamless. But at the end of the day, it's about seeing whether or not this will provide a different value proposition. And the value proposition's got to go beyond sort of making your life easier. It's got to go to things that are more meaningful, like making me feel safer, and helping me live more independently.
And if this is technology that's actually improving health outcomes, is it potentially then part of the medical system? Should doctors be prescribing this, integrating it into their practice? Possibly should it be covered by insurance company? I mean, if this is something that is going to keep someone out of the hospital, prevent falls, make them, improve cardiovascular health because they're more connected, or any different number of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal that we like. We'd like to be able to take the technology, prove that it works, get it to be more widespread, and then figure out ways that this can be easily adopted. And reimbursement is a huge factor to adoption from the clinical side.
What's something that's just on the cusp that possibly should be covered and really widely adopted, but right now isn't?
We're doing some really exciting work at Cedars-Sinai on the use of virtual reality. And I think most people think of virtual reality as maybe an entertainment tool or perhaps a distraction. What we're finding is that it can be used to reduce pain and reduce stress and anxiety. A true therapeutic tool on par with efficacy of morphine. It can reduce pain by about 24%. And we've actually seen patients who have been on narcotics who have been able to get off of narcotics with the use of the VR. So how does that work? Well, what happens is, and this is an emerging science where we have not just sort of seen it on a couple of occasions, but we actually have a randomized controlled trial that we just conducted at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles that is demonstrating that we are able to show patients who are receiving the VR have lower pain compared to the control group. And interestingly enough, the control group was watching the same type of content on a TV. So it's not the content, it's the immersive nature. And what's happening when you do the functional MRIs on these individuals is that the brain lights up sort of like a Christmas tree when you see the functional MRI with patients with pain. When you use the VR, it quiets down. And even after you take it off, it remains quiet for several hours. And in fact, we have seen patients who have been postoperative patients that are now alternating their pain medications, their narcotics, with the VR. A woman delivered a baby using VR and no epidural. A child with sickle cell pain crisis came into the ER, was given VR. So this is actually a validated solution that is on the cusp of sort of becoming more widespread. And in fact, I think this is an area where we see great potential for it's basically what we call therapeutic VR.
That's exciting and also scary to me. I mean, I don't want to get people hooked on virtual reality, but you know, we roll these technologies out judiciously and work them into the system. Apparently, you know, and as doctors, these are tools that you might use, like thinking about it like a pharmaceutical.
Absolutely.
You write a prescription regimen and say,
and that's what we're studying.
Don't spend your whole life on VR.
We're trying to understand, how do you dose VR? How often do you do it? Which is too much. You know, you want to. It's so similar to how we think of medications and other treatments. This has really become a brand new area. How do you take some of these technologies and treat them much the same way that we do with medicines and others?
Yeah. Well, so what is an ideal aging scenario, say 10, 15 years from now, look like with, like, say the most exciting technologies that are in the works right now get quickly mainstreamed and adopted? What's that look like for someone?
Well, I would say that we're in a bit of a crisis right now, and we're not seeing it so much here in the States, but we're seeing it globally, where we're running out of care providers. People are aging, and we're running out of people to care for others. So we need to figure out a way to enable people so that they can safely and comfortably live in where they want to. And if we find that technology can do that or help us in that process, then we are better able to sustain the aging population. So imagine a world where you could actually, you know, feel connected, even though you are miles away from your closest partner or your family members. Maybe you've got a watch on that allows you to, anywhere you go, it not only tracks your steps and things of that sort, but let's say you sometimes forget things and you wander a bit, it creates what's called a geofence and allows you to be able and other folks to know that you've gone outside of a certain boundary. Imagine now if you've actually fallen or you need some help, similar to how, like, we have OnStar, it would then talk to you and you actually have voice communication. And now imagine if you have an ability to use this as a mechanism to control things in the room. We're actually there today. The technology is there. It's just a question of validating these solutions, making sure that they work as well as we can, and in the infrastructure that is out there today. Once we get there, where people are starting to say that, hey, this is easy, this is simple, it's cost efficient, I think then we're going to be able to provide great opportunity for people to live more independently.
And do you see more adoption, more openness among younger people? Do you think, I mean, the aging process will change when the coming generation is 85 and older?
Absolutely. So we're seeing it today. I mean, as you can imagine, all of us are exposed to technology to some degree. And as we continue to age, we will retain that ability to know that. And so many of the folks that are on the older age spectrum have not been exposed. So as we continue to see an aging population, there will be a better understanding of how this technology works. And that will give us greater opportunities. But at the same time, it's still incumbent on us to make this technology as easy and as seamless and really adapt to what people are expecting. And what we've been focusing on, we've been looking at things that everything from individuals that have deficits or disabilities from hearing to vision. How can you address those? And technology, surprisingly, can do that. In fact, one of the VR applications we have is specifically geared towards improving vision for those with cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration by pulling in the imagery and doing AI on it.
So at what point is something like that, does it need to be regulated as a medical device or even a pharmaceutical? I don't know, it's blurring the lines here, but something that could easily be sold to and misrepresented to the public if it simply went onto the market.
Absolutely.
Or could be misused in a way that prescription medications we've chosen to regulate. Should we be thinking about some technologies in that way?
So that's why we talk with the FDA all the time about, in fact, I'm not sure if you saw, but we were selected as one of 9 companies that are part of a fast track approval process for FDA. Because what we want to do is we want to be able to take this, get this reviewed by the FDA, and bring it to market so that individuals can take full advantage of it. But absolutely, that would be one element. The other is working with healthcare providers. I mean, a lot of these are true therapeutic tools, and finding ways that this can be deployed through your doctor's office and through hospitals, because that will give a greater sense that, hey, this is really something that I can better manage. And it's not just me buying it off of Amazon, but it's really me working with my care provider to deliver.
Yeah, it certainly feels things are more legitimate.
Yes.
I did a story about doctors who are writing prescriptions for time in parks. Just because when a doctor tells you spend more time outside, just get out and move more, it's kind of hard to. It doesn't actually change people's behaviors. But if the doctor writes a prescription, go 20 minutes a day, 4 times a day or 4 times a week to this park, people actually are more likely to do it. And so you
That's
might
right.
have a similar sort of uptake of healthy habits with something like VR.
And we've actually done a study where it's not just the prescription, but you're getting automated reminders that are encouraging you. And we know now with the technologies when you're not active and things like that sort. So we can, in many ways, nudge individuals to good health. We can encourage them. We can make it easier. We can make it more fun.
Yeah. Is there a question from the audience we could cover? Yes.
Hi, Mike Royson, Cleveland Clinic. One comment, one question. The question is, hearing is an expensive thing to correct and one that disables the elderly because it causes lack of socialization, etc. We've heard that iPhone and Samsung are both working on inexpensive things to augment hearing greatly. How close are you?
In the first question, our first answer is yes, we are working on it, but we have not shared and released anything quite yet, but soon to come.
All right. We have to wrap there.
The second thing is a comment. When we do automated reminders, we get only about a third of the success as when we do socialization with a buddy reminders.
Yes.
That is, a human being connected to another human being is much more likely to change behavior than a human being with a text.
Absolutely, yes. Socialization. I really do believe that many of these technologies need to be implemented in the context of a program. In a program where you've already established a personal relationship with a support mechanism, a network, a buddy. But when you do that, technology is the great enabler. It allows us to cross the boundaries, and that's where we have tremendous opportunity.
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.